before.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Yeah, this is a warning to you all. Watch what you say. Anyway, I forgot to ask him to do devotion, so I'll get to that in just a minute. But let me share something tonight with you to start with. Scripture is 2 Corinthians 2:14-17. This is a Phillips translation. Thanks be to God who leads us wherever we are on his own triumphant way and makes our knowledge of him spread throughout the world like a lovely perfume. We Christians have the unmistakable scent of Christ, discernible alike to those who are being saved, to those who are heading for death. To the latter, it seems like the very smell of doom. To the former, it has a fragrance of life itself. I was just reading an author who said something about she had a nice expensive bottle of perfume, and it was in a very pretty bottle, and she decided she was going to save it for special occasions. So she, of course, there weren't as many special occasions as she thought there might be, and she had it on a shelf, looking very lovely. But after a while, she went to use it and found out that she had left it there so long that the scent had changed and it wasn't any good anymore. It was actually not pleasant smelling at all. Now from that, she said, and I thought it was quite a good observation, that the perfume was not meant to sit in the bottle. The perfume was meant to be used, and as long as it, if she'd used it, it would have served its purpose. And the same thing when we talk about our writing, is it's nice to want to write, but we have to do something with it. We have to get it out there. And if we think about it, it can seem a little bit egotistical, but we write essentially to be read and read by others. And we want to communicate something to others. And so as difficult as it is sometimes to take that step of putting yourself out there, it is important that we work on that. And of course, if you think about the what Jesus said, that to those, let's see, my mind's gone blank. Anyway, that to those who have, more will be given. To those who don't have, they'll lose even that. And the idea is, if you don't put it to use, it'll quit being available to you. And on the other hand, the more you invest, the more you work it, the more it will provide dividends. So that's something for us to always remember with our writing. Well, that's my profound thought. Now, I have not sent out a thing about devotions for the last couple of weeks, or the last couple of times, and I realized that tonight when I was getting ready for this. So, Anita, next month, will you have the devotion ready for us? Okay.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Now, couple of things too. I wish the other was, I don't know. I haven't heard from anybody. Let me just check my email real quick. See if anybody's written to me. No, they're ignoring me in all levels tonight. Okay.
Maybe I insulted Donna with my edits.
I don't know. Well, yeah, she may not be speaking to any of us anymore ever. So we'll find out. But we'll work with who we got here. So now, were any of you actually presenting a piece to be read tonight?
Yes.
Thomas.
Yeah, and Anita did my look through.
Okay, then Thomas, why don't you go ahead and read your piece, and then Anita, if you can please then provide the critique, and then we'll jump in there.
The title is For Eternity. Considering the final eternal destination of our soul is generally well received when describing the glories of heaven. What Christian doesn't like to imagine walking on streets of gold when returning home to their opulent mansion after attending a feast at Abraham's house? Thoughts of heavenly citizenship brings great comfort for grief and sorrow when invoked at practically every funeral. As people living in a broken world, we all long to reside in a place of no more pain, tears, and suffering of any kind. Contemplating hell, however, is a very different story. Eternal damnation is a concept which is generally avoided as being offensive or just basically unpleasant to bring up in conversation. If it's discussed at all, this locale is spoken of in hushed tones, or as my grandmother wielded it, as a scared straight tactic while she directed us as children to draw pictures of fire-filled dark caves with demons holding pitchforks. At the risk of stepping on sensitive toes, let's take a moment to consider the question, what is the primary difference between heaven and hell? Is it the streets of gold, fiery pits, mansions, pitchforks, eating with Elijah, or any other biblically supplied physical description? Or could it be that the essential difference between these two eternal destinations is even more soul impacting than any physical manifestation? Is it possible that there's anything more important than a wheelbarrow of gold or a fire-filled lake? Instead of physical heaven and hell stuff, let's take a moment to consider that the key distinctive between these two destinations is whether we'll exist eternally in the presence of our glorious, wondrous, magnificent Creator God or not. A life without the presence of God is a state of being we currently can't imagine. Even in this world of sin, decay, and brokenness, the triune Lord is present and provides common grace to everyone. As Jesus stated during his Sermon on the Mount, he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain to the righteous and the unrighteous. And in Luke, he stated, he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. However, try and imagine how utterly dark this world would be, how meaningless our existence if the Lord was absent. What benefit would a wheelbarrow full of gold be if we had to live a life without his presence? And couldn't we endure a fiery pit if Jesus was standing next to us? For a testimonial, ask Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When Jesus encountered a Roman centurion's faith, he made it clear that reward and punishment is found on the presence of God. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 8:11-12. Paul also spoke to the church about an eternity which would be devoid of God's presence. He will punish those who do not know God and do not obey the gospel of our Lord Jesus. They will be punished with everlasting destruction and shut out from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his might. 2 Thessalonians 1:8-9. A fiery pit is certainly something which should be avoided at all costs. But the thought of an eternity without the hope of ever again experiencing even the smallest divine flicker of light should terrify us into wanting to rescue everyone we ever meet. But oh, how ineffable to spend an eternity in the presence and warm light of our loving Creator and Redeemer. A popular song released by Mercy Me in 1999, I Can Only Imagine, provoked us to consider how we would pour ourselves out before God when we first see him. Now take the thought of this first encounter and multiply it by an infinite number of days. As Jesus promised his followers, my Father's house has many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me, that you may also be where I am. John 14:2-3. The Apostle Paul wrote of looking forward to his own eternal fellowship with Jesus. I desire to depart and be with Christ. Philippians 1:23. What Paul didn't say was that he was looking forward to his mansion home across the street from Moses on Golden Lane. To live eternally with our Creator or to never again feel his presence is the central choice of our life. The thought of talking to him, of touching his healing hands, of seeing the glow of his face, and of feeling his loving embrace, echoing warmth through our deepest inner core for an eternity. What could be possibly better than that? May the Lord remember us in his kingdom.
Yeah, listen, I just while you were reading, realized I had not sent these articles out. So I just sent them to your email. So if you have the opportunity to open your emails, you can see the articles. And my apologies to you. But anyway, Thomas, we'll have Anita do her critique, and I'm going to follow along, and I'll share. And Mike, can you get to it on your computer? Yo, Mike, you're muted, so I don't know if you can or not.
Sorry about that. I think I've got it.
Okay, for eternity. Okay, go ahead, Anita, and share what you would like to say to Thomas.
Well, first of all, I love the topic of heaven and hell. We just don't hear anything about it. It's so silent in today's world. It seems like to me, it's not preached, not talked about. I think people are forgetting there's a heaven to gain and a hell to shun. So thank you, Thomas, and I hope this arrives someplace so people can actually think about it. And secondly, I do not see myself as any kind of editor. No, I do not, but you're teaching me. So here we go. I may be right, I may be wrong, but these are my thoughts. At the bottom of the first page, it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph. And quite frankly, I don't have my edited copy here. I have my handwritten edited copy. So I don't know if I added or took, if there's anything else in what I sent you all. But I just felt like there's a lot there. Glorious, wondrous, magnificent, creator, God. But when you read it, Thomas, it came out different. I felt better about it when you read it and how you read it than when I read it myself. So that may be fine and not be a problem at all.
Well, I have a question. I have a question about that. Should I stop as we go, Alan, or wait until the end?
It's okay to go ahead, and if Anita doesn't mind you.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
I wrestled with there after that list, God, and then or not at the end. Two things. One is, should there be a semicolon before the or not? And should it be a question mark?
Okay.
And I wrestled with those two things.
I would say, actually, if I were writing this, I would put a period after God and make or not just its own sentence.
Okay. With a question mark?
No, I would,
No?
no, I think it's fine as a statement.
Okay.
All right, you go ahead, Anita.
Okay, then at the top of the next page, which this is, he causes his sun to rise on the evil, on the evil and the good. So that last sentence, and in Luke, he stated, I think Matthew 5:45, it looks like is the first time you reference scripture. And I think I didn't see what translation you're using. So I think we've learned.
Yeah, Alan's trained me to use the NIV when I send anything arminess. So, but I didn't put it. You're right.
I think as I understand, we only have to put it once, the first time.
You both, it's okay. To interject here, Anita, you're correct. That if when you're introducing a version, the first time's enough to note it, and people assume the rest of that follow are the same version. But again, in this day and age, NIV is the most commonly used version, and it's often not even noted that it's NIV. So it's like, it's kind of a, either way is correct, is what I guess I'm saying.
Oh, cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And then with that sentence, I kind of would have taken out the and just started it in Luke 6:35. He stated, and let it flow. That's just that. I don't think it matters one way or the other, but that was just my thinking. At the bottom of the page, but oh, how that sentence right there, my personal preference is to capitalize creator and redeemer. Whether that's a requirement, I do not know.
I was going to note that those should be capitalized.
And in the very last paragraph, Paul didn't say, what Paul didn't say was that he was looking forward to his mansion home across the street from Moses on Golden Lane. Is it possible that Golden Lane should be capitalized since you're giving it a proper name of a street?
It should be.
Okay.
And then to live eternally with our Creator, again, a capital C, or to never again feel his presence. And then the next sentence went into a lot of, to the thought of talking to him, of touching, of seeing. And I thought it might just flow very smoothly if the thought of talking to him, touching his hands, seeing the glow without the last three ofs, I thought would move very smoothly. I don't know whether that's true or not, but, and then I'm kind of thinking what could possibly be better than that, could need a question mark. And then I thought, may the Lord remember us in his kingdom, might need a period at the end.
Yeah. Mike, you got anything you want to share on this?
Again, great relevant topic. And it's in a succinct form. It says something very nicely. I like it. I like the flow that Anita was talking about at the end, without the ofs. The thought of talking to him, touching his healing hand, seeing the glow, and so it flows nicely that way. I think that flows good, and I think it both fits in the realm of evangelism, of salvation, of so much. You know, what's the purpose of it? I'm sitting here in the evangelism department trying to help people remember what's important about why are we a salvation army, and part of it's not just sitting in an easy chair in heaven. It's also avoiding an awful hell. And what makes hell awful? No relationship, no contact with the Creator and the Redeemer and the lover of our souls. Yeah, it's a great piece.
Okay, Donna's
Thank you.
joining us. Yeah, the couple things I would share on this, and that is, let me go back to the beginning here. Hold on. It is a good piece. It's a very relevant subject, and I'm pleased to see that you wrote on that. I will keep looking because Donna is trying to connect and having some difficulty. Anyway, and okay, a couple things. In the second paragraph, scared straight in quotes, that's fine. So okay, Donna can't join the meeting.
I finally got in, sorry.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, she did.
Yay, Donna. Yay, hooray, hooray, hooray.
I had the wrong 7 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, well, you probably, yeah, that's why I even tried to put it in different time zones there for everybody. But anyway, okay, let me find the article again. All right. Scared straight. It's good that you put that in quotes, but that doesn't need to be capitalized. Okay.
It doesn't. You say it does not.
Does not.
Okay.
Also, on the third paragraph, biblically is actually lowercase. I don't know why, but we don't capitalize biblically. It's lowercase. Bible we capitalize. Biblically we do not. Don't ask me why. And then the last line, that same paragraph, fire-filled lake. That should probably have a hyphen between fire and filled.
Okay.
All right. What Anita said about Creator being capitalized is correct. It's one of the proper names of God. And you have the right idea on the quote marks, but just in the wrong place. The quote marks, and I'm looking at page 2 now, the first scripture, and you were consistent, I'll give you that. But the quotation mark should be before the parentheses, so after unrighteous, not after the scripture reference. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. This
But no period. Let me just clarify. But the period goes after the parentheses.
After the parentheses. Periods where it
Okay.
belongs quotation mark is not.
Okay.
All right. All right, just trying to see if I had something else here. This is good writing. I do, in the last paragraph of that same page, ineffable. Ineffable is a wonderful word. I don't think it's in common use. And if this is, I just think it's a little too, it's a 25-cent word. I think you can get by with something a little less pretentious than ineffable. And I know you're not, I know you're not trying to be pretentious, but to remember that the average reading level in the United States and what's published in magazines and so on is 6th grade. So ineffable is not said by 6th graders.
Yeah, that's an easy fix to indescribable.
Yeah, indescribable works. All right. What Anita said about Golden Lane is correct. I'm looking toward the bottom here. And may the Lord remember us in his kingdom. That also, she's right about there being a period at the end of that. So there you go. Any questions, Thomas, from that?
No, the reason I hit creator as a small c is because we talked about when we use the word divine as a descriptor is small d. Is there something more you can tell us about that?
Well, yeah, divine is okay. We were talking about God being the creator, then that's capitalized.
Wouldn't it have to do with whether or not it's playing the role of a noun or an adjective?
Yeah, I think that's correct. If it's an adjective, it would be lowercase. If it's a noun, it'd be uppercase. And same thing, redeemer would be the same way. So like if you say, well, redeemer is a proper name. Again, see, the thing is with these things is a lot of times it's a matter of who is editing it at the time. And I would make those capitalized. That's me. So it's a good question. All right.
So the question is, who's going to publish this?
Well, I actually, what I was going to say to Thomas, send it over to me, Thomas. I'm ready to use it.
All right.
Yeah, make those corrections
Nice.
and send it
I'll
over
make
to
the
me.
corrections.
Make the corrections and get it into me because I have a slot for it in the next Rescue the Parachute.
Super.
Yeah. All right. And aren't we? That's sort of like the star. You're the star student tonight. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Okay. Donna, you are next, and so everybody needs to get up I think I just lost my letter. Okay, hold on a second. I messed up. I should have sent these out before, and I do apologize. I didn't send the notes out for everybody. So, okay, assessment. Yours assessment of students, right, Donna? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So if we can get everybody to look at that, and Donna, if you would read it, and then we'll have Mike do his comments. All right.
Okay. All right. The educational systems of the United States, England, and Ireland all have national standards of academic assessment. And by comparing these three systems, Douglas, McClendon, Robertson, Travers, and Smith review the inclusive assessment framework for students with disabilities. Inclusive assessment is divided into three areas: assessment for all students, appropriate and user-friendly assessment across general and special education, and assessing the whole child. Who is assessed, how they are assessed, and what material is assessed are important parts of this research on inclusive assessment. Inclusive assessment should incorporate all students, general education, as well as those with learning disabilities. This brings about the question of how standard assessment strategies will not be appropriate for all students. So accommodations for alternative assessments will need to be made. Academics are the obvious answer to what is assessed. However, inclusive assessment should include all areas of the student's life. My phone so I can access this. The 4 stages of this review include building case studies for each country, gathering literature from various international sources, provide tables to explain significant details about each national assessment, including student age and assessment schedule. The assessment policies of the United States, England, and Ireland, when they were then compared to review the assessment procedures and applications, concluding with the discussion of the findings. The United States and England had many similarities, including their focus of developing assessment that was appropriate for students with disabilities to participate in a national assessments. In Ireland and in the United States, sample-based assessments were given over a variety of curriculum areas, and some alternate assessments. Wait a minute, it just jumped on me. Where did I go? It went too far. Some alternate assessments were given to accommodate students with learning disabilities, but the results were not recorded in the national data. While all 3 countries have some sort of alternative for national assessments, the United States is leading the way with the most developed system. However, implementation varies from state to state and school to school. Important questions for further research are, do national assessments lead to the narrowing of curriculum, a teaching to the test, so to speak? And is there accountability, or are students being excluded from these assessments? In concert with the first question, if teachers are teaching only the curriculum needed to be successful on the national assessment, there's a large portion of curriculum as well as life skills that are being omitted, and all the students will suffer from this omission. Including students with disabilities in a national assessment of our education system is fundamental. Finding ways to accommodate all students will give our schools a better picture of our instructional practices as well as successes. Focusing on academics, communication, social, and life skills will produce students who are well-rounded and capable of transitioning to higher education or employment. Students with learning disabilities may be working below grade level, but they can still make yearly progress, and using alternate assessments, we can celebrate their achievements. Families who move from state to state can face extra difficulties for students with learning disabilities because we do not have a national standard that every district and state recognizes. Even a gifted student runs into problems when their family moves. There is an ongoing long-fought battle of teachers, parents, and students that still has work to do to fully implement an inclusive assessment framework. Personal experience since the early 90s notes that there has been a lot of progress, and a properly written individual education plan can be of immense help. Sorry, my computer's not wanting to cooperate with me. One of the greatest needs in educating the general education teachers about IEPs, or individual education plans, is how to implement them. There needs to be further research on alternate assessments, and data needs to be recorded so that comparisons can be made and new ideas studied.
All right, very good. Okay, Mike, why don't you share your comments?
Well, one of the first observations, of course, was rather than a biblical text or something that I might have been familiar with, I was dealing with a subject and a theme that was quite different than one I expected. But that's all right. It's still excellent writing, and obviously it was educational to see and to think about the issues being discussed about these assessments. So, having said that, just a couple things that were somewhat not clear, or even when Donna, when you spoke, you said some things that aren't there in writing.
Okay.
Little things, which, for example, one of the first things, and there might be a regular rule, just like we're talking about with capitals, with nouns and creator and divine and so forth. The education system of United States, England, and Ireland is what's written. Mm-hmm. Is it the United States, England, and Ireland?
It should be the United States.
It should be the, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because it shows up a couple times and
Okay.
without the, and just made me curious. The second line of the sentence started something that was a little unclear for me, comparing three systems. All have national standards, and by comparing these three systems, and then we had 5 names. And I think that was the group of people who were doing the framework study.
Right.
But and it had nothing to do with the 3 systems exactly.
Got it.
Would
Yeah,
that be
there
true?
should, I think if you put a comma there, by comparing these 3 systems, comma, Douglas.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. The way it's written, it is confusing.
Got it.
All right, I'm down to the middle of the sentence. We have in parentheses, learning disability, LD. This brings about the question of how, comma, standard assessment strategies. I didn't understand the reason for the comma.
Probably just my fingers doing something.
Well, that's a reason, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Second paragraph. The 4 stages of this review include building case studies and so forth. When we say review, we're referring to the inclusive assessment framework.
Yes.
Okay, all right. It was there, just
Okay.
just looking for assurance. Then we have a couple things, and I just wondered if so you have gathering literature. We'll skip a sentence, including student age and so forth, and then provide tables. Would there be consistency if we said gathering literature, providing tables, and including student age? As opposed to provide looks like it's a different tense than providing or than gathering.
Got it.
It's a good point. And it should be the same form of the verb.
All the way. Yeah.
Yeah, all the way.
Mhm.
Third paragraph. It was a little unclear to me. It's a lengthy sentence. Important questions for further research are, in my mind, I put a 1 kind of mentally,
Mhm.
What are, do national assessments lead to a narrowing of curriculum? Boom. And then a teaching to the test, so to speak. That wasn't real clear as a phrase to me.
Okay.
I think it referred to something about the connection with the curriculum.
Mhm.
And teachers, I'm not sure, but that was a little unclear. But if I'm still going under important questions for further research are, I don't find a second thing. It said 1, do national assessments lead to a narrowing of curriculum? 2 would be, is there accountability or are students being excluded? That or are and so forth. It just was a little unclear.
Yeah, and it's probably that should be our teachers teaching to the test would be the third one. And
There you go.
I didn't phrase that properly.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a couple minutes, but go ahead, Mike. You're doing well.
Okay. Yeah, well, the only other thing I have is down at the bottom of the page, the next paragraph. We have a sentence that says individual education plan, in parentheses, can be of immense help. That sort of ends a sentence, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because of the way the next part of it is formulated.
Okay.
One of the greatest needs is educating the general education teachers about IEPs and how to implement them. It looks to me like that would be a better place for a period than a comma.
Okay.
Yeah, and then yeah, that was it. Those are the only comments I had.
Okay.
It looks like the battle is still being fought about these assessments, but there's progress being made. Huh?
Yeah, very good. Thomas or Anita, do you have any comments?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One is on the learning disabilities, LD. First time Donna told us about what LD was, and I get that, no worries. But the learning disabilities were small letters, words, but it was capital letter designations throughout the paper, and that may be fine. My question is that the right way to do? Is that the way to do that?
That's the right
Or not?
form. She
That
did
is
it
the right form?
correctly. Yeah.
Okay, good. And the second thing is, out of pure ignorance, the Douglas et al. 2016 that continually gets referenced here.
Yeah.
What is that? I don't. It's not a quote. What is? I don't know what that is.
They were the creators of the inclusive assessment framework that most of the countries, that those three countries are using.
So it doesn't follow a quote. It's just placed in for it when something has come from there, when information has come
Well,
from there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, let me just interject here. She's using the American psychology, can't get it out, association notation form. And that's the way
Okay.
it's done. So it's a little bit different because it's an academic type of paper. So yeah, because I did my undergraduate degree in psychology, and you had to do citations like this throughout your paper.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering. That's questions for me.
Well, along with that, though, Donna, it would have been helpful. I'm assuming that you're referencing a journal article. Is that correct?
I believe that's what it.
Yeah. And you should also include the page number
Okay.
with that. And you should, I think, at the bottom of the paper, of your paper here, have the full citation of that journal. And
Okay.
the journal.
I did earlier, but I didn't when I forwarded it. Sorry.
Yeah, the journal and the article in particular.
Okay.
Because obviously you were using a particular journal for this. Okay, I'm sorry. Does anybody else have comments before I have a couple other things I was going to share with Donna? Anybody else? Anita? You're muted, Anita. So if you're talking, we don't know it.
It interests me because my mom was a special ed teacher. So it was very interesting to see what the study is and where they're headed with it, because it is something that's not always addressed, especially in other countries. So yeah, but otherwise with the writing itself, no, I have no other comments. Thank you.
Okay. Let me share a couple of things, Donna. First of all, again, this is an academic article, which takes on a different form and approach and sound than obviously one that's written for a general interest publication. So it is good, and obviously makes its point very nicely. So I want to congratulate you for that. One of the things I would suggest, though, is to make it easier to digest. Looking at the first paragraph, where it says inclusive assessment framework for students with disabilities. Inclusive assessment is divided into 3 areas. I would put a dash there and then make bullet points for assessment for all students, new bullet point, appropriate and user-friendly assessment across general and specific special education, and comma, bullet point, assessing the whole child. Okay, see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because you're covering a lot of ground in those 3 statements, and they're all, as you well know, can be expanded on quite a bit. And they all are, although they're related, they're also, kind of specific areas. And it would make it easier for your reader to digest what you're saying. I would also suggest that same thing down in the 3rd paragraph, I believe it is. Well, the 4 stages of this review include building case studies for each country. Again, it's difficult to digest these long sentences with these very heavy phrases. And I mean, you don't want to keep doing bullet points through your whole article, and yet these are pretty heady things. Now, again, if it's an academic article, they're usually not too reader friendly to begin with. So, but again, I don't know what you intend to do with this. And I would go down that third paragraph. Important questions for further research are, and I would take each one of those. What I put is maybe a colon there, and new sentence. Do national census lead to a narrowing of curriculum? Question mark. Next thing, and you said teacher. Somehow rephrase that so it becomes a question as well, because you said these are the questions.
Okay.
And then the third question, take out the and. Is there accountability, or are students being excluded? Is there accountability? Question mark. And then new sentence, or are students being excluded from the assessments? Question mark. So you can say 4 questions, but this is really 5. I just, or important, you didn't say number of questions, sorry. You just said important questions. I would do that because is there accountability, or are students being excluded from the assessments? Are, again, I think 2 kind of different questions rather than necessarily alternatives to each other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Again, from your reader standpoint, academic writing or not, make it easier for them to digest what you're saying, rather than having these very long and complicated sentences. And listen, people reading academic papers, and you'll know this from your own research, you can tell when the person has better writing skills than others, and some of them you have to practically pinch yourself to stay awake to get through, and others just kind of flow, and you're really kind of captured by what they're saying. And that would be the same thing I suggest for this. My question would be, what would be your intended use for this in the long term?
Well, like today I was substitute teaching in a special ed classroom. And so I'm hoping to have some input in the years to come. And my original plan with getting my master's degree in special education was to help Army kids make school transitions when they moved, but that didn't happen while I was active. So I don't know if that it still is a possibility now that I'm retired, but I just do a lot of research in this area to try and help kids any way I can. So
yeah,
this could be posted in a teacher's journal or something, but that would be about it.
Well, I mean, the thing about transitions, especially for special needs students, and special needs can be, like you mentioned, not just those who have learning disabilities, but kids who are gifted. That's a special need. And you're correct that the Western countries have tended to do much, much better with this than the developing world, because they're just trying to teach kids to read and write. They're really the most basic level. But you have the Officer magazine as a possible place within the Army to find a home for this, or similar type writing. I would make it a little less academic. I would try to make it a little more layman friendly kind of thing.
All right.
Because again, your understanding of it is far superior than the average officer even would even be able to. I mean, you just have far better training than the rest of us do. And yet, there are those of us who have had kids with special needs and know, when an officer, you have children with autism, for example, or children with ADHD, where structure is so very important, and the move just blows that all out of the water.
Right.
And the IEP again is a very important thing. But again, I don't know that IEPs would. Now you explain, you say what it is, but it might be good because again, something like the Officer magazine is being read all over the world to even explain what an IEP is. And just say an IEP is where you sit, the parents and the teachers and the whatever sit down together and so on and so forth. Again, people who know sorry, but people have never had to do an IEP.
Right.
It's kind of a foreign concept to them.
Okay.
But I really do think the Officer Magazine might be something to seriously think about,
Okay.
as a place to maybe start talking about these things, because again, that the universal experience that we have as officers is what happens to our kids each time we move. I mean, it's we.
Right.
I'm not speaking out of turn here. I don't think anybody. We all know that, and different moves at different stages of the kids' life. When they're little, it's a big adventure. When they get to
Right.
middle school and high school, it's
Right.
like, I hate you. I hate the Salvation Army for making me move, and
Right.
we have to make new friends and da 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 da. But
Yeah.
then they also have the special needs, educational needs. It becomes even more complicated. Anyway, so that's a
Mhm.
universal experience for we as officers. There's 25,000 officers plus in the world, and most of them are parents
Okay.
or grandparents, and so that's just what I would say to you on that. I would say, if this is the article you want to work on, or if you want to maybe say this is the start of where I want to go,
Okay.
just do that. But again, if you're gonna, forgive me for going on about this, but it would be good to cite your source.
Okay.
But I don't know that you have to do the APA type citations within the article itself,
Okay.
because it's for laymen. It's not meant to be academic.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much. There's a very wide vein of material that relates to us, even if we're not academic, in dealing with it. When you talk about the whole child, you're talking about life skills. You're talking about more than just academic. You're also talking about,
Right.
some critical families who move from state to state we'd be facing difficulties. There's a lot in this article that I think can be very, very positive in something that officers and families can enjoy and benefit from.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say to you too, Donna, is parents who are dealing with that want suggestions about what they can do.
Okay.
And if you can say, I would recommend the following.
Okay.
Boom, boom, boom. Do this, do this, do this, do this with the child, do this with the teachers, do this with the whatever.
Yeah.
So they can have something to hang on to. And even countries like we served, of course, our last country overseas was Jamaica, which is a developing country. But even Jamaica was starting to realize they had kids with autism, they had kids with ADHD, and they were trying to grapple with how to educate those kids and help them. They were not nearly as developed as in their thinking or whatever, but they were trying to figure out how can we contextualize this. And so, and in fact, I had a divisional secretary who has served with us, and their oldest child was on the autism spectrum, and they were trying to grasp. The school was trying to grasp. They were trying to grasp. How do we help our son? And they, it was all new to them, and of course, they didn't have near the resources we do here.
Sure.
So, but again, they were aware that he was even on the spectrum. That was something that was not recognized a generation ago.
Sure.
So anyway, I would just encourage you with it. I do think there is a need within the Salvation Army for this information to get out. So I would encourage you with that.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to think of something else. I mean, who knows what could develop? I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to think here on my feet, and it's not doing well. But again, especially with your passion, your education, your background, I do think there's very much something that can be contributed through your writing.
I would encourage two other, and that's your women's magazines, even the online one and national. but definitely the IHQ Women's Magazine too. Those, this topic isn't talked about. And the farther east, like Eastern Europe, those kids are hidden. They're not allowed to go outside. So any hope you can bring, and just putting it out in the open begins to embrace these children and the parents and the moms who are just brokenhearted.
Sure.
So please do that.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
great idea, Anita. And I the women's magazines are always, they're looking for material about how can we equip our women and how
Okay.
can we help them in their families. I mean, that is, they're just trying their best to find that kind of material, and you have something that is certainly needed. Yeah, just keep work on that and think about those,
Thank you.
those avenues. Yeah.
Thanks.
Let me we two of our folks didn't join us, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap it up here. But the Southern Spirit is going back into print publication in April. We're doing it as a monthly. It was done through the year, normal, except for the summer and December, as a twice, or I don't think it was bi-weekly, but twice a month. But we're doing it as a monthly. We're expanding it to 12 pages. It was 8 pages, if you don't remember. So we're fewer issues, more pages. And the kind of thing I'm dealing with right now is generating content for that. We need news items. We need interviews and that kind of thing. And next time, have we talked in this writers group about doing an interview with somebody? Have we talked about that? Does anybody remember it?
Not
We don't
one that-
remember it. It was either a very bad presentation or we didn't do it.
We
So
must not-
I don't remember
Okay.
you doing it.
okay. Well, let me talk about how to do interviews. Interviews are great because from a number of standpoints. One reason is that people who will never write still have something to say. And the interview is a way to discover that and to bring it into, circulation. So next time I will plan on talking a little bit about how to construct your questions and how to do the interview and so on. The other thing with the interview is that I love, and I'll probably repeat this, is when I do an interview, I can ask people questions that in normal conversation, it would be considered rude. It would be considered intrusive. It would be considered, or it's just not the kind of thing you talk about while you're sitting around, having your lunch. But when you do an interview, you can probe at the very deepest levels of people's motivations and their thoughts and so on. And it is a really a great process. And I've had people say to me, before, I've never told anybody that, just like a counselor, I've never told anybody about that. I can't believe I said that. So it really is good. I've interviewed the high and the low and in between. And it's always a rewarding thing for me to be able to do the interview. So there you go. Anything in closing before we go on our merry way? Okay.
I heard NPR, somebody started a web page or something along that. I think it's an 11-year-old girl. And she's got tens of thousands of hits. And she's interviewing, and she's doing it by energetically interviewing top-notch people that have world renown that don't normally, some of them don't normally give interviews to people, but they're allowing this 11-year-old girl to do it.
Yeah,
It was just an article I heard yesterday.
Well, I'm going to try to pass myself off as an 11-year-old. See how that works. All right. Well, okay. Anything else before we go now? So it should be. So Mike, you're writing next time for Donna to review, correct?
Okay.
And then Anita's writing for Thomas to review. Am I right?
Bring it.
Yeah. Okay. and I'm just here to kind of referee. All right, there you go. Okay. Well, listen, folks, thanks for joining us. Remember that is Donna, and again, I need to remind people of the Central Time Zone that it is 6 o'clock your time. So I'll try to be, and I'll also try to send the articles out ahead of time. Shame on me. I blame it on getting old, but I was doing this when I was 20 years old. So there's no good excuse at all. So anyway, well, y'all have a good night, a good week, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Alan.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.